Five Nights at Freddy's. If you're watching this video, you probably already have a basic understanding of the series. But did you know it was considered a horror game at one point? Yeah, me neither. I feel like there's a reason the modern FNaF games seem to have lost a lot of their fear factor. Obviously, you could talk about the fact the series is now pushed more towards children, or how the lore is seeming to almost overshadow the games themselves now, which may partially be the case, but I believe there's more to this issue than a simple change of direction. So today, I want to take a peek at what I believe made this franchise at one point the horror icon it was. And to do that, we have to talk about the shadows. Oh, no silly, not those kind of shadows. Although I'm sure I have plenty to say about RWQFSFASXC, I actually wanted to talk about real shadows. With shadows, or more simply, the dark, being used in the horror medium for years at this point. So how do the first few games use shadows so well? And why do I believe it's so important? Well, if you really want to know, you'll just have to watch this video to see. Yep. There's your hook. Hook, line, and sinker.
Swarm of bears?
Yeah.
Herd of bears?
Yeah, I've heard of bears.
With the first few FNaF games being of the resource management variety, all about keeping yourself safe until 6 AM while keeping track of the animatronics, you might already be able to imagine how the use of shadows for gameplay makes perfect sense, especially when looking at the first game, where you have to keep a close eye on them so as to be prepared if they ever wander over to your office. With both Bonnie and Chica playing a very similar role, with them both for the most part being very easy to find on any of the cameras with very few exceptions, so they pose no real challenge. All of that, though, contrasts with Freddy in this game, where after a few nights of easily being able to locate the animatronics, now suddenly it's almost impossible to find one, with almost every camera he's on having only a portion of him being visible, with that being the whites of his eyes. So now, if you ever want to find him, it'll take away time from finding the others. And despite being the face of the game, the only time we get to see him fully is when it's already too late. Unfortunately, FNaF 2 doesn't use shadows quite as well when it comes to the gameplay, because unlike in FNaF 1 where you have to keep track of each of the animatronics, this game has your camera usually in one place and one place alone, the music box, which I find really upsetting for a multitude of reasons, but especially because it seems like we lost out on a really cool gimmick. With the game relying on the flashlight, so you'll obviously want to preserve power, and on the cameras you can use it, so you can see if there's any animatronics there, and I kinda wish this was actually a part of the gameplay. Sort of like the fog in Plants vs. Zombies, where like the shadows it's hard to tell what and who's in them, and you can use some of your resources if you need to know who it is in that moment. But as you get more experience with the game, you can more easily tell who's there and won't have to waste energy on it. But since you most likely won't ever be using more than one camera, it's safe to say that's out the window. Hey, just like Charlie. Oh, too soon? So for now, we can skip over FNaF 2 and go straight into FNaF 3. If FNaF 1 used shadows well, then FNaF 3 mastered it, with Springtrap being the only one you have to keep track of, and it quickly becomes a game of cat and mouse. And with the whole place being dark and puke green, he practically blends right in. And instead of just hiding in the dark like Freddy, he simply takes advantage of his surroundings. He even seems to be aware of what he's doing, purposely standing almost out of view, standing in the shadows, hiding behind corners, as if he's learning where all these blind spots are. Another thing I appreciate about this game is the fact that he has multiple positions on some of the cameras, so if the player gets used to looking for him in the same spots every time, he can suddenly be standing somewhere else. Yeah, he's a real nightmare to deal with. Oh shoot. FNaF 4 is one of the last games to really use shadows for the gameplay, where you have to watch the nightmare animatronics, with many of them either being down the hall where they'll quickly pull themselves back behind the corner, which is sort of one of the only uses of shadows in this game. What is seen in the shadows is easily misunderstood in the mind of a child. Then use shadows for this game, like, come on! It's sad to see how little it's used in this game especially. With the exception of them hiding behind corners, they're pretty easy to notice. But considering the lack of any cameras, I can't really blame it all too much. Besides, I'm sure there'll be plenty more examples when they bring back cameras to the series. Let's see the next game. Okay, the game after that. Okay, maybe the game after that. See, now that's something I can work with. Let's see these... Okay, we can just move on.
What if just everything goes black and it never turns back on?
I've always thought a major part of horror, at least for me, is the idea of not knowing, which is why I believe the dark is considered scary. You no longer know what's in there with you, making what you do see scary, and what you don't far worse. I think this applies especially well to shadows that hide the features of something, such as someone's face or body, where the shadows can abstract something to the point where your brain can barely read the information it's taking in. And we can see this best in one of Foxy's renders from the first game, where the shadows sort of consume his body, with him almost looking like Mango with how contorted he looks here, especially with the fuzzy, blurry quality of the cameras in these games. Even when looking at a better quality image, it still doesn't look quite right. While you can better see his body as a whole, his head is still tilted at this odd 90-degree angle to stare at the camera. I feel like this could have even inspired his mechanic in UCN, where just like Mangle, Foxy can remove pieces of his body, attaching and reattaching however he pleases. Speaking of Mangle, another reason I feel FNaF 2 doesn't hold up quite as well nowadays is because you don't really get to know these characters very well. Despite their great designs, I think the first game did a better job at giving you a personal relationship with each of the animatronics. And I believe this issue could have easily been solved if we got a chance to see each of the characters on the cameras. But because of the music box, most people never do. Which is a shame, considering you can tell how much effort went into each of them. This especially goes for Mangle. Well, sort of. For some reason, on certain cameras she isn't actually there like the others, whose models are properly there in the renders, while Mangle for some reason is just overlaid onto the screen, which in-game with the static doesn't always look horrible, but once you notice it, especially with the flashlight not having an effect on them, you can tell the lighting doesn't quite match, which is odd, because you can tell a lot of work went into making her look as unnerving as possible. And although I'm picking at it, I'm pretty sure most of the community doesn't even know this is a thing. And perhaps it's simply one of those, once you notice it, you can't unsee it, situations. So, I'm sorry if I ruined these screens for you. But even with that, the use of harsh shadows, especially with Mangle's already, well, mangled body, thank you, it still does a good job in making an already scary character look, unnerving. And even with that, they still more than make up for it with Mangle's model in FNaF 3. And fun fact, Phantom Mangle is the only animatronic in this game to not have their model appear in the extras menu, which is actually because I don't actually know. Let's go ask them. Oh my god.
I think there's someone hanging right there.
I know I've been focused a lot on the Foxies, but that's simply because for some reason they tend to have it the best in these games, such as in Sister Location's Custom Night. Just like in the first game, when they're in their last cycle before leaving Pirate's Cove, we get a look at Funtime Foxy when these harsh shadows are covering most of their body, with their eyes shining through very prominently. But for some reason, they're one of the only characters in this game to really take advantage of the harsher lighting, at least in the Custom Night. We see better examples of this in things like the title screen, Below in the game's fourth night, and especially with Entered in both the endings. We get two great examples of how these shadows can really let the horror of these designs shine through, especially with the use of pupils, being a major reason why both these designs and many others work so well. But if you want to hear more of my thoughts on Entered, you'll just have to go watch the video I made about them.
Cha-ching!
There are a ton of examples, but instead, since so many of these characters are arguably already scary, you could say the shadows simply play into their already good designs. So how about I show you how the use of these shadows can fix one of the most hated characters in this series.
I asked for no pickles and they gave me the fucking McPickle Pounder. What the fuck is this shit?
For most of this video, I've already used examples of arguably scary characters, so instead, I want to talk about one of the most hated designs in the series, the one and only Mr. Afton. More specifically, this Afton. I've been a Scrap Trap defender for quite a while now, not because I think it's a particularly great design, nor do I believe it's an improvement over Springtrap's original design, but instead because of how it's presented in this game. The first time we see him, he's fully draped in shadow, slumped over, and frail. Yet somehow his presence is still intimidating, and when he finally moves, he tilts his head back, almost looking smug or even cocky, which I feel is very in character for him, and this goes for the other characters as well, with this section of gameplay always being the most horrifying for me. You get to see these characters mere inches away from your face, when they look their most terrifying, and the game forces you to stare at them, to focus all of your attention on them, because even the slightest shift in movement or subtle sound could mean life or death. Well, I mean, you don't technically die, but you lose out on like $5,000, which in this economy you're basically dead. It even manages to make a character like Lefty look scary, a character with almost the same model as Rockstar Freddy, who looks like the only thing he could hurt is a former president. You see, the joke being he likes money, and most presidents are on money, and Rockstar Freddy, you don't have to do this, put the weapon down! Even when looking at the secret images you can find of them, slumped over and seemingly non-functional, are still somehow unnerving. This is why I also feel a lot of the office sections are lacking, especially when it comes to the jump scares, and not just because they look like that, but because you get a good few seconds after the jump scare just to look at them, losing all momentum, yet somehow looking even more lifeless than when they're supposed to look practically dead. And then compare that to when the place is set to flames. You can see the dreaded William's face as he claws at the vents, the use of chiaroscuro, and yes, I'm smart, and I know big words. The use of it in this series is what I believe makes it so scary, showing so much emotion that may have been lost without it. But sadly, as the games progressed, this art form was lost over time, slowly falling by the wayside. So how about we look at these games?
Sipping on the Dr. P soda. Soda.
Just wanted to let you know your bars are freaking trash. Never pick up a microphone ever.
As FNaF eventually moved over to Steel Wool, it quickly became clear something was missing. Obviously, the games are never going to perfectly match Scott's style, but with the series no longer being point-and-click games, and instead now fully in 3D, those shadows that were once a part of every game were basically lost in translation. Where before, every render could carefully be composed to look their best due to the fact they were mostly static images, but now everything had to exist in the third dimension, and because of that, even when these characters are perfectly replicated, they never look quite as scary as they used to, and I don't really want to pin the blame on Steel Wool. It's clearly an issue that stems from the shift in the game's design, which ultimately ended up leaving behind a huge part of FNAF's core identity. But do I think this means this art form for the series is lost? No. At least, not entirely. Even if it's harder to pull off in a fully rendered game, it can still be done. And it already has been. In Help Wanted's Curse of Dreadbeard DLC, there's a level by the name Hallway Crawl, where the player has to crawl through a pitch black hallway and make their way to the FNAF 4 bedroom, while having to avoid Nightmare Bonnie and Chica, who occasionally appear from behind the doors. And as the level goes on, Nightmare Freddy eventually starts approaching from behind to keep the player moving. And every so often, when the lightning flashes, and you can actually see the hallway, there's a chance Nightmare Foxy will be there, and you have to stay perfectly still to make sure he doesn't jump scare you. And I believe this level truly understands how to use shadows for these games, both from the horror aspect with how the shadows hits Foxy's face, the harsh red lights that smother Chica and Bonnie, and the way Freddy slowly becomes more and more visible as he approaches. And it's properly used for the gameplay, with you still being able to see Foxy in the dark, with him even being able to turn back into his fleshy form. Aww. And I think it's important not to lose this, with these newer games still having the potential to use shadows the way the old games once did, and possibly even in new and more interesting ways. And maybe this could even make FNAF scary again. Howdy everyone! As some of you may have realized, this video is actually a re-upload. This is because I had to redub the entire video that I made before, which is because the audio of the original was, trash. But I hope you enjoyed this video nonetheless. Thank you all for watching. Please consider liking, subscribing. You get the gist by now. And I'll see you all in the next one. Bye bye.
She's got her hair tied up in braids and glasses perched up on her face. She is a small girl taking on a big world with inventions she made. And though her plans may go awry, she's gonna get back up and try. Gonna be a shining star, she's going for Freddy.
You're still here? It's over. Go home.